Madagascar, a land of splendor, beauty, and the extremes of nature. This island on the Indian Ocean is a pearl of creation. For millions of years, Madagascar was isolated from the outside world and thereby formed its own unique small world. The mountains, cliffs, and forests of Madagascar are unique features, evolved through slow, steady change over time. For anyone who sets foot on the island, the irresistible charm of Madagascar strikes within seconds and lasts a lifetime. From the coast to the high-lying heartland, one is constantly accompanied by a faint feeling over the entire visit of being witness to something unforgettable. While traversing the island, one is confronted at every bend with the secret magic and undisputed beauty of Madagascar. The unrivaled uniqueness of nature on Madagascar displays itself under the sun. Even if man has been present on the island for 2,000 years, he has not yet even begun to fathom the essence of the island, its animals, and its plants. Some of the most fascinating animals in Madagascar peer head down, while fluidly and skillfully moving through the thicket of the rainforest. In all the years of their existence, the lemurs have learned countless useful skills that have allowed them to become one with their surroundings. Anyone who encounters lemurs for the first time has a feeling that the monkey-like creatures, in all their variations, are both alien and yet familiar. What kind of creatures are these, with their wide-open eyes? These impish figures that flit through the trees and yet, surprisingly, seem to remind us of humans. We now take you through the spectacular landscape of a strange, surreal, and yet simultaneously familiar and fantastic world. One that will remain with you for a long time. The sixth continent, the island of untamed nature, Madagascar. This landmass, surrounded by the Indian Ocean, has many names that all try to express its unique magic. The origins of this beautiful but quirky paradise go far back in time, to an age that only reluctantly reveals its secrets. Hundreds of millions of years ago, the supercontinent Gondwana emerged, spreading over South America, Africa, Australia, India, and Madagascar. As the forces of plate tectonics became stronger, this gigantic landmass broke apart, and, slowly but surely, the continents approached their present positions. Some 90 to 150 million years ago, Madagascar finally separated from Africa and India. From that point on, the island developed varieties of life that can only be seen here on the fourth largest island of the world. Isolation and solitude shaped its natural beauty and landscape. The numerous indigenous species make Madagascar extraordinarily unique. There are many different regions and zones on Madagascar where completely different types of vegetation can be seen. Parts of the east coast have especially high temperatures, humid air, and a dense rainforest. The transition from the green, wet savannas of the coast to the jungles of Madagascar is rapid. Like the tropical forests on the mainland, the rainforests of the island offer a wide variety of animals and plants. In order to obtain more nutrients, some plants try to outdo their competitors by completely overwhelming them. In contrast to the rainforests on the continent, the Malagasy forests often let in a little more light. From the outside, however, one only sees a closed, dense covering of trees. With their vital water, numerous rivers run through the plateau and coastal regions of Madagascar. They flow hundreds of miles through extremely varied landscapes. From the barren and rugged mountain areas to the lower regions covered with pastures and small woods. The rivers also allow the drier parts of the island to bloom. The streams often turn brownish red as their waters carry away large amounts of the typically reddish soil on their long journeys. With the help of plentiful water resources, forests cover the hills and valleys of the Madagascan coastal regions. But also in remote places, nature takes root. This lonely tree holds watch over the vast valley below. Even in broad daylight, the full moon lends the ever-changing vegetation a quiet and magical atmosphere. In still and hidden places like this, the beauty of Madagascar is revealed in its wondrous entirety. A little away from the forests and outnumbering the plants, animals such as reptiles move about on the warm, sunlit cliffs. Savanna-like areas covered with high grass often extend in front of sweeping, tree-covered landscapes. A herd of Zebu Madagascar humped oxen graze in front of the steep slopes. The hump of the Zebu is very distinctive and distinguishes them strongly from the domestic cattle of Europe. They probably owe their very stocky and powerful appearance to their ancestor, the extinct aurochs. The cattle are not only sources of dairy and meat products, but their leather and the resulting finished products are also very popular. The Zebu cattle are well adjusted to the tropical environment and resistant to the ever-present heat and dangerous tropical diseases, making Zebus extremely important animals on Madagascar. So important that there are far more Zebus than people on the island. Probably the most famous of the animals on this unique island are the lemurs. These primates spread to every corner of the island throughout its long history. These wet-nosed primates perfectly adapted themselves to each habitat they found. Today, there are nearly 100 different species of lemurs. One will not find these extraordinary adaptation artists on any other continent. The most famous of the lemurs, the ring-tailed lemur, lives in the southwest of the island. Their distinctive ringed tail betrays them on the spot. The ringtails have settled in a variety of habitats. Whether in the dry thorn, the deciduous forests, or in the rocky mountains of the island, the ringtails seem to feel comfortable everywhere. These lemurs seem particularly well adapted to the rugged terrain of the mountains. Their hands and the soles of their feet are more leathery than those of their relatives. But this protection is beneficial even in the forests of Madagascar. The rough, leathery texture of their hands also improves the ringtail's grip on branches and tree trunks. Their characteristic tail fills many roles. On the one hand, it's a striking, distinctive visual feature with which the ring-tailed lemurs can apparently communicate. On the other hand, the length of the tail helps their balance and coordination during jumps from tree to tree. Most of the time, however, the ring-tailed lemurs move about through the branches and on the ground on all fours. Lemurs are very sociable creatures. Only in search of food might they separate themselves from their groups. Each group of ringtails is dominated by one single female. As a result, the males must subordinate themselves in all decision-making to the females. Senior females come before senior males in the distribution of food. Lower-ranking members of the group are literally forced to the outside. Because of this, they have to wait for their dinner, while at the same time offering the higher-ranking individuals a degree of safety from enemies. With other species, however, different methods of cohabitation are found. Lemurs often create more or less solid ties with their own kind. For example, they can live in a marriage-like relationship with one partner for years. As with all animals and plants on Madagascar, the question is raised about how they came to the island. So far, the latest research cannot provide the answer. The biggest obstacle for settlement on Madagascar is the 400-kilometer-wide strait between the island and the African continent. Earlier, it was thought that there might have been a land bridge between the two land masses. But this theory was rejected because no evidence had been found for such a connection. Equally outdated is the thesis that the lemurs made their way to Madagascar from island to island. Briefly, it was even thought that a small continent between India and Madagascar existed, which could explain why the wet-nosed primates are found on both parts of the Earth. The most widely accepted theory today is that lemurs arrived on the island on drifting plants. Though the primates would have to have survived a long period without food, there are indications that some lemurs can sharply reduce their metabolic cycle, very similar to hibernation. Thus, the passage of the lemur's ancestors was possible. Once in their new home, the primates quickly began to spread to all corners of the island. Soon, they preferred the dense forests of Madagascar. Very few species dared the savannas, the dominions of the Malagasy carnivores. Lemurs find protection in trees from many of their enemies. For in the dense foliage, the nimble climbers can quickly escape unseen. Lemurs have evolved very differently amongst themselves. There are species that weigh less than 50 grams, while there are others that can reach up to 10 kilograms. Also, lemurs' bodies have evolved differently depending on which part of the island they live. Species which move predominantly by jumping through trees have much longer legs than lemurs that roam through the forest on all fours. In the species itself, there is little sexual dimorphism, that is, large differences between males and females. Neither the appearance nor the behavior of the two sexes differs widely. With a long nose and big eyes, large lemur species may appear a bit like a dog. Together with the typical characteristics of primates, such as the sometimes thick coat of hair and long arms, lemurs have an unmistakable form. Small and light species have gradually specialized themselves for the night. Under cover of darkness, they can safely seek their food. Larger lemurs, instead, prefer the day. Although they're not easy prey because of their weight, many predators, like the phasas, still lurk in the depths of the forests for an opportunity to overpower the lemurs. It's for this reason the wet-nosed primates are always on guard. Although lemurs always keep an eye on their surroundings, they're not shy creatures. Rather, they observed objects that are unknown to them a long time before making a slow approach. But before they blindly explore something new, caution prevails, and they retreat to a safe place. The senses of lemurs are extremely keen. Their sense of smell greatly surpasses that of other primates. This is due to the mucous membranes around their nostrils, which better allow them to perceive odors in the air. Also, their eyes are sharper than those of other forest dwellers. This not only has to do with the size of their eyes, but also the reflective layer on the retina, which improves the lemur's vision. Their striking faces and often nocturnal habits associated them with Lemur, the Roman spirit of the dead. A special feature of some types of lemur is their ability to vary their day and night rhythm strongly. This so-called cathemeral rhythm is advantageous if they have to adjust to new seasons or to other choices of food. Lemurs in the west of Madagascar especially benefit from this way of life. The daily life of the lemurs is dominated by long, fast-paced climbing tours through the beautiful forests of Madagascar. Through the waist-high grasses, plants, and seedlings, they pave their way to their favorite places. On dead branches or uprooted tree trunks, the lemurs look out over the landscape, which spreads out around them like a carpet. From their vantage points, they can occasionally detect more than just trees and leaves. Now and then, they peer through the gaps in the canopies of the trees to the peaks and hills that cover Madagascar. The largest part of Madagascar is occupied by the vast plateau. About 2/3 of the island is covered by the highland. The gigantic plateau rises between 800 and 1,600 meters above the surrounding countryside. On the plateau itself, more rock formations rise out of the ground and layer themselves into high, wrinkled mountains. The Andringitra Massif is in the southeast of the vast plateau. The rocks are often fractured and crossed by wide furrows. Like much on the island, this mountain range was also created by volcanoes. The intoxicating biodiversity around the top of the mountain is also a result of this activity. 50 different kinds of reptiles hide between the bushes and the canyons, along with 1,000 individual species of plants. It often rains on the slopes of the mountains, especially in winter. Thus, the surrounding valley turns into a green landscape in which this grand diversity can freely unfold. Further north are the Ankaratra Mountains. The mountain range was formed by volcanic activity and covers a large part of the central plateau. The granite and gneiss of the rugged mountains create similar jagged structures as are found in the Andringitra Massif. In some remote valleys, smaller deciduous forests are well served by the moderate temperatures and regular rainfall. Large tracts of the mountain range are dominated by grasses and shrubs. The volcanic origin becomes noticeable not only with the jagged grain of the summit, but also in the soil itself. The volcanic plains are very fertile and rich in nutrients. A valley of grasses and trees sprout from the otherwise barren and harsh soil of the mountainous areas. Even tropical fruits are found here. The high plateau of Madagascar dominates like no other feature. To the west, the plain dips slowly and continuously into the lowlands. In the east, however, the plateau ends distinctively and sharply. From north to south, these towering cliffs separate the east coast from the center of the country. In the shade of the cliffs extends a green plain, a coastal strip, also into which all kinds of life is filled. The area around the high mountains of Madagascar is very difficult to enter. The road network of the island is very poorly developed, so that full days need to be spent for even small stretches. The rugged terrain tests the body's reserves. Belts of forest spread in front of many of the mountains, which make the climb even more strenuous. One has to fight through thickets for a long time before reaching an oasis like this. The crystal clear rivers are not only a blessing for the forest and its inhabitants, but also for the hot and dry feet of hikers and mountaineers. The terrain around the small and large streams is characterized by all kinds of plants that seemingly enjoy the cool water. From ground-covering shrubs to towering trees, everything nourishes itself here on the source of life as it flows by. Despite the rain and the rivers, there's also a period in Madagascar where little is available to eat. Too little rain, high temperature. These are reasons why food can be scarce. But even in such cases, the lemurs are well prepared. Some species can store large amounts of fat in their bodies. However, they store the reserves not in their bellies, but in a completely different and surprising place: in the tail. If no food is present, the lemurs simply live off the inventory stored in this unusual region of their body. Fully to exploit the reserves as long as possible, the animals fall into a kind of short hibernation, or torpor. In a state of torpor, lemurs change their metabolic cycle in an extreme way. For example, their body temperature does not remain at a stable level. Rather, it adapts to the temperature around it. Lemurs are the only primates that fall into a state of hibernation during dry periods. However, as long as there is still an abundance of food, lemurs do not resort to this extreme measure. The furry primates often spend a long time in search of food. Fruits, grasses, and leaves are eaten by almost all types of lemurs, and depending on the species and time of year, they may also hunt smaller, fleshy prey, such as spiders or centipedes. A favorite treat is the nectar of flowers and plants. The sweet liquid offers lemurs much energy, which they could well use for their daily climbing tours. The primates have become strongly specialized, in accordance to their preferences. Some species have an enlarged appendix to improve the digestion of certain plant parts. Others have formed a long tongue, which makes it easier to reach the delicious nectar. The climatic conditions in Madagascar have led to narrow reproductive windows for the lemurs. The time window for fertilization in some cases is so small that the females are fertile for only a few hours a year. Most young are born towards the end of the dry season. This is very favorable for the newborn because they spend their first critical months during the rainy season with its abundant food supply. Large reviers of the groups often overlap at the edges with the reviers of other groups. In order to communicate in such cases, as well as in the daily routine, lemurs have developed a resourceful system. Scent glands are spread all over their body, on palms and armpits, with which they mark the trees and plants of their surroundings. The sensitive noses of lemurs can detect odors over long distances. If they want to find their group, or quickly point out anything in particular, they return to using their voices. Some species have even developed different sounds for the approach of different predators. Far more species of lemurs are hidden in the forests of Madagascar than one can imagine. Even their colors and shapes may vary greatly. It so happens that new species are discovered even today. Maybe other unknown species await us in the depths of the impenetrable forests. The lemurs are an exceptional and unique species of Madagascar's world. But the island still offers many more rarities. One meets many other groups of animals in the forests, aside from lemurs. One of the most interesting is the reptiles. The scaly lizards have spread themselves across the island. Their most mysterious and interesting representative is the chameleon. Chameleons are indeed found all over Africa, but their home is here on Madagascar. A full 40% of all living species are found in the forests of Madagascar. Unlike the visual organs of other animals, chameleons are able to move their eyes independently. With this ability, they have an almost panoramic view and can always keep an eye on their surroundings. In addition, their eyes are much better than, say, those of a human. The special structure of their eyes allows them to see sharply, a kilometer away. While hunting, chameleons can rely on another sophisticated body part, their tongue. As with frogs, the tongues of chameleons can be very long. In just a fraction of a second, they can catch and swallow insects. Chameleons are true balancing artists. With their light weight, they can even move on dead leaves and rotten branches. This creates a pretty uneven and unsteady gait. Some chameleons have perfected this method of movement to the point that they themselves appear like a tumbling leaf while walking. It may occasionally happen that chameleons come face to face in the foliage of the trees. With their distinctive head crests and also with different eye features, they can communicate well with one another. The most famous attribute of these lizards is their ability to change color, which can occur rapidly. Camouflage only plays a minor role. In fact, very few chameleons can actually change color for reasons of camouflage. This is because the color spectrum of various species differs. Above all, the lizards rely more on their natural shape than on elaborate changes of color. The colors are therefore primarily used for communication. Very often, chameleons change the pigment of their skin in order to communicate their moods and intentions to others of their own kind. Various shades of colors can signal aggression, submission, or other purposes, such as a display of courtship to other chameleons. Most chameleons, however, deal with camouflage by other means. Many chameleons that live in the canopy of the forests already resemble leaves. If they remain still, practically none of Madagascar's predators can detect them. Far away from the lofty heights of the tree canopy, this little turtle goes on its daily search for food. It finds only a few succulent plants now and then on the leaf-covered ground. Turtles are some of the few witnesses of the dinosaur age. Separated by great distances, the turtles on Madagascar have followed a different path than those in the rest of the world. These reptiles are aware of their surroundings. Not only can they see parts of the infrared and ultrasonic ranges, but they also possess a very developed sense of smell. With the aid of these senses, and of course their strong shell, they can confidently roam the Malagasy forests. Some hungry crocodiles lurk on the banks of this river. One can clearly see the relationship of the armored reptiles to dinosaurs. Their entire body is covered with thick scales, which makes them almost invincible to any enemy. The reptiles are hard to detect in the murky water. perfectly still and quiet as a mouse. Crocodiles can wait for hours for their victim. Quick as lightning, they can grab and hold any prey with their powerful jaws. Although there are very few of the armored reptiles in Madagascar today, the wild specimens still pose a threat to unwary animals. Crocodiles become increasingly aggressive if they've not eaten for a long time, even towards their own kind. Normally, the reptiles are loners. Crocodiles congregate only in places where they expect a large selection of prey, as if to take part in a feast. In one of the trees, a snake winds through the branches. Its eyes have something of a thermal imaging property, which allows the snake to locate prey easily. However, far more important than the eyes for the snake is its forked tongue, which can filter even the tiniest bits of scent from the air. Once a potential prey is located, the snake makes its way slowly. Its entire body is one big powerhouse. At first glance, snakes may not seem as strong or as dangerous as some feline predators, but first impressions can be misleading. With its strong muscles, it can stealthily sneak up on its victim. However, upon reaching its prey, it cannot rely on a poisonous bite, because there are no poisonous snakes on Madagascar. Instead, the serpent uses its powerful body to strangle its prey. Although Madagascar is only a few hundred kilometers away from the cradle of humanity, the island was one of the last places to be settled by humans. Only between 500 and 200 BC did people arrive on Madagascar. They lived on the island for many centuries, divided into tribes which were tightly interwoven with their natural surroundings. The population of Madagascar is diverse in its composition. Over the course of time, different cultures from completely different corners of the world settled in Madagascar. Till today, many Malagasy still honor a light-skinned people called Vazimba as being the first settlers. This strongly supports the idea that the first immigrants came from Asia. For example, by far the most common ethnic group, the Merina, came from Indonesia. The typical Asian facial features have been preserved up to today. Also, rice cultivation, the architecture, and the cult of ancestors were absorbed by the new society to a large extent. On the west coast, however, one mainly meets the Sakalava, with their African roots. In the Middle Ages, Arabs also arrived on Madagascar. With them came not only numerous traders, but also a large influence on the language of Madagascar. Many more large and small ethnic groups are found on the island. Nevertheless, all these different people have formed a more or less common culture. Certain special characteristics have joined the people of Madagascar together. A common language, Malagasy, bridges all minor disputes and differences, particularly from the time the first kingdoms ruled over the entire island. The language has become increasingly important. Because of the large number of different cultures, many religions are widespread on Madagascar. Regardless of which faith a Madagascan follows, he adds on the traditional ancestral cult. A proverb in Madagascar illustrates the intense connection of the people to their dead. A house stands a lifetime. A grave is built for eternity. In order to stay close to their relatives, even after their deaths, a great feast is held every few years where the dead are removed from their graves and displayed in a circle of the living. Society is also supported by many taboos, which are regulated under the Fadi. Like an unwritten code, the Fadi governs the lives of all. Despite this, many independent customs and traditions have developed in the regions of Madagascar. The blessings of rain, sun, and water vary among the different regions. In barren areas, broad and rapid rivers from the highlands are a natural type of life insurance. Besides fruit and grain, other foods are also important to the Malagasy. Along the coastal areas, many farmers have built a special relationship with their cattle. This is due to the inhabitants of African descent, as the Mozambique Channel was probably crossed by the ethnic Bantu. The newcomers introduced the cattle as a symbol of their cultural identity. So the social status of a family, as in many parts of Africa, is measured by the number of cattle it possesses. Further inland, however, a greater emphasis was placed on rice. Today, this type of grain is the main source of food on the island. Outside the cities, the vast rice terraces are so layered that they form gigantic formations. The terraces were built primarily to allow for profitable paddy cultivation. For as soon as the rice is covered with water, disease and pests are inhibited, and the rice thrives. As with most countries, including Madagascar, rice farmers are poor here, and rice cultivation is only just enough for them to feed their own families. But the gratitude of the Malagasy for the rice remains unbroken. In the Malagasy language, therefore, the word friendship means as much as rice and water. Green pastures and the hem of the dark forests announce the home of the lemurs. The furry, unique creatures are like secret guardians of the original ancient woods. Gentle, yet curious about everything new and unknown. Madagascar's symbol, the lemurs, move from tree to tree. The primates lend the forests an unforgettable charm that distinguishes Madagascar. Always alert and with an eagle-eyed glance, they look through the dense forests. Vigilant, they take in all that is happening in their revier. Like many animals, they seem simply to follow their primitive instincts. Only eating and sleeping seem to be of importance to them. But in the character of the lemurs, in their behavior and their understanding of the nature around them, there is a beautiful philosophy of calm, peace, and a harmony amongst animals and plants. Madagascar. It is more than just a geographical destination, a simple name, the black and white name of a country. Madagascar is like a living organism that is constantly evolving and completely independent from the rest of the world, taking it on a path which no other region, no other country, nor even any other continent can follow. In the valleys and plains, in the rivers and on the embankments, an unparalleled diversity of plants and animals completely fills Madagascar. Few regions in the world possess such an overwhelming attraction as Madagascar. On this island, even the smallest plant is of inestimable value for the balance and beauty of Madagascar's nature. Forms of life that seem unimportant and insignificant to our eye serve a purpose which we would only first notice if they disappeared from the island. Like a base in a piece of classical music. As long as it's there, we only hear the perfect sound of the entire orchestra. But without its deep, barely noticeable sound, we have a nagging feeling that something crucial is missing. The nature of Madagascar continues to play its own unique symphony for the rest of the world.